Do we have any citizens to be heard? If you'd come forward and give us your name and address and take a couple minutes to give us your request.
Good morning. My name is Brandon Crooks. I live at 3324 Northwest 17th Street, Oklahoma City. And I'm speaking today to request that the Lincoln route that runs by the election board have services offered on the weekends. Tomorrow for early voting, there won't be a route that's easily accessible. So if there's any way that a route could be implemented, either for tomorrow or for future elections, I think that would be in the benefit of the greater good.
Well, I've got your request, and I've visited with staff, and it's just almost impossible for us to do it on this short a notice to schedule drivers. But in the future, you know, if that is a need of the public, then I think we certainly would consider it in the future to provide that service. But it's just, with that schedule, with that bus driver scheduled, and it's kind of almost impossible to do it, but we will consider it in the future.
I certainly hope that, like in the future, that you'll consider providing that service on future election days. I realize it's short notice for tomorrow, but hopefully in the future that's a service that can be offered.
Well, we certainly will consider it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your concern. Next item is approval of our minutes of our October board meeting. Do I hear a motion to approve, or are there any corrections or additions?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. And then we have minutes of our Joint Transportation and Finance Committee meeting of October 31st, which was a very educational meeting and of great concern to all of us. And we're going to discuss a couple of those items today, but I have a motion to approve those minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Consent docket. We only have 3 items on the consent docket. Agreement with the Arts Council on our Sheridan parking garage, and a lease agreement with the Ambassador Hotels for Century City parking, and a resolution to provide appraisal service. Are there any of the 3 items that the trustees would like discussion on? If not, I'd have a motion to approve our consent docket.
So moved.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Items for individual consideration is change order number 3 to the contract with Jim Cooley Construction for our maintenance building improvements and service buildings improvements on South May. Jason, if you'd briefly.
Yeah, so work continues with our maintenance building, service building improvements. As you recall, project entails several different items. Some of the bigger items included are the sprinkler system, the expansion of the restroom and break area for the service lane, and a paint booth for our body shop. The change order that you have today consists of 5 items, and you can see that bulleted list in the memo there of the different items that are included in the change group. In the change order. The total increase is $23,778.53, or 3.88% of the contract amount. Did want to point out that of that almost $24,000 increase, $10,000 of that is related to a sand and water separator. Essentially what this is it's a tank where the water from our wash bay runs off into this holding tank. And during the construction, we identified that this tank needed to be replaced rather than initiating a separate project to replace this holding tank. We just determined it would be more cost efficient to include it in this existing contract. So that's why you see that $10,000 change for that holding tank. So with that, the new contract amount would be $656,606. Change orders 1 through 3 total $42,731, or just under 7%. There's an increase of 21 calendar days, and I will point out that when the initial estimate was being looked at, we thought we'd be done on November 7th. I can tell you, after looking at the project and spending some time with Dennis yesterday, seeing where we're at, it's probably going to be the end of November now before we're finished. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
All right. Any questions? I hear a motion to approve item A.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Our next two items are two of the items that we discussed at great length in our Transportation and Finance Committee meeting, the first being to adopt a resolution approving Amendment 2 to the Hall Pass program. And as I said, we had quite a lengthy discussion. All the trustees and staff participated, and I think we've come up with a reasonable outcome of this to give us a test program. So, Jason, if you'd like to just brief us on that, please.
Sure. So this is an amendment to the Hall Pass program, and as you recall, the Hall Pass program as it currently exists is a special fare pricing that we have for students in the Oklahoma City public school system that are in middle school or high school. And the special pricing on the fare allows these students to be able to purchase unlimited monthly transit passes for $10 a month. So it's a significant discount to even the normal student rate. We have seen some success with the program. In fact, in FY15, we provided about 15,200 trips using the Hall Pass program. The last fiscal year, FY16, we saw about 19,873 passenger trips. So we have seen a little bit of growth. What we have noticed, though, is that adoption of the program widespread throughout the district has not occurred. Most of those trips are really coming from one school, and that's our pilot school, Emerson. So with that, and then a recent request by the Oklahoma City Public School District to consider allowing that Hall Pass to be free for all freshmen and sophomores in Oklahoma City Public School District, we as staff and then with the Transportation Committee met to try to determine what the best approach would be in order to garner additional interest and usage of the Hall Pass program and respond to the Oklahoma City Public School District. And so what we came out with, I think, is a really good compromise. And I know that Bob Hammock's with us today, and we really appreciate the work that he's done and helped share some ideas with us. I know he was at the Transportation Committee, and we appreciate that. But basically what we come up with, I think, is a good compromise in that moving forward, the Hall Pass program will exist as it is today, and then we will amend the Hall Pass, or what's being proposed is we will amend the Hall Pass program to allow 11th and 12th graders in the Oklahoma City Public School District to be able to receive free transit passes. And those free transit passes will allow the students to be able to use our Embark bus service to obviously go to and from school, but they can use those passes anytime our service is in operation. So to use it for extracurricular activities, to get back and forth to maybe part-time jobs, those passes will work for all of those reasons. And so the program that we have proposed, in addition to opening up to 11th and 12th graders, it's also a 6-month pilot program versus the 1 year that was initially requested by the school district. And I'd like to touch on kind of both of those variations and share some comments from the committee. But basically, when you think of the Hall Pass program, one of the things we want to do is, first of all, have it be as successful as we possibly can. And we want as many students to use it if we're going to offer it. And although we looked at the freshman and sophomore grades, I believe it was the committee that determined, really the most usage might come from 11th and 12th graders, because particularly in Oklahoma City Public School District, if students are needing to use our bus service to get to and from jobs, a lot of the freshmen obviously aren't of age to have a job, and a lot of the sophomores too. So we felt like if we were really trying to extend it to the group that could use it the most, the 11th and 12th graders were probably most appropriate. And then as far as the 6-month pilot program, the reason why we are recommending 6 months instead of 1 year is simply because due to some FTA regulations with fare structure, once a discounted or special promotion fare is in place more than 6 months, the FTA considers that to be a permanent fare. So we really were trying to be very cautious about having a pilot program locally to extend a year when the FTA would kind of look at a pilot program really needing to be more of a 6-month range. So our hope is we can start the program the date the school district requested, which was early January 2nd, in fact, and it would run through June 30th. So we can go ahead and start the program in January, and then during that 6-month pilot program, we can begin evaluating the usage and also determining if the program continues, how to incorporate that into our fare structure permanently. So with that, those are the changes that are proposed and some of the rationale behind.
Mr. Chairman, I also wanted to mention that this will give us a good opportunity to ask our fare consultant to evaluate this, not just on how it fits into the rest of the fare structure, but also that Title VI and environmental justice analysis to assure ourselves and all of our patrons really that our fares are working in a fair, F-A-I-R, structure.
All right, thank you. Bob, I too want to thank you and the school system for their great interest in this and your input, and I'm really proud that we're able to, come up with this pilot program, and hopefully it'll be tremendously successful and really accommodate a great need. So with that said, any other questions? I'd have a motion to approve item B. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item C is an adopted resolution for the administrator to negotiate a contract for operations and maintenance service for the Oklahoma City streetcar. So this is kind of the final peg in this new system, and I think we're very pleased with the outcome of the RFPs. And Jason, if you just kind of brief us on that.
Yeah, as you know, the activity that we've been spending in preparing for streetcar operations has increased substantially over the last year. In fact, we've been very busy, in particular over the last 18 months, preparing for streetcar operations, which will begin at the end of 2018. And as you recall, some of those preparations have included working with consultants on safety plans, looking at proposed service profiles, developing an operations plan, and also working with our consultant, Shields, Oblitz, and Johnson, in determining appropriate organizational models. And so with some of that work we've done with our consultants, and we have Rick Gustafson here today, who I've asked to share a few words also with the trustees about the process. We were able to put together an RFP for streetcar operations and maintenance contractors. And as you'll recall, the trustees approved that release of RFP on July 1st. We ended up advertising that request for proposal on July 15th and July 22nd. Proposals were due on August 30th, and we were pleased to report we received 4 very good proposals. We met as an evaluation committee on October 18th and actually conducted interviews with all 4 proposers. And so we certainly thank each one of those companies for working with us through that interview process. It was an entire day that we spent as an evaluation committee. We then met on October 24th, and the evaluation committee determined that Herzog Transit Services had the best proposal. And so with that, the item that's presented today authorizes the administrator or his designee to begin negotiations with Herzog Transit Services. In the event, for some reason, an agreement can't be reached, then the administrator would be authorized to negotiate with the second-ranked proposer, which was Transdev. And so with that, I was going to ask Rick to share a few additional comments just about the process and some of the next steps before we bring back a contract to the trust for approval.
Thank you. I'm Rick Gustafson with SOJ in Portland, Oregon. We've been involved in most streetcar projects around the country, And I'm very impressed with what's happened here in Oklahoma City. You have an excellent team, both through the MAPS office and Embark with Jason and his team. And you're proving that excellence by the proposals that you've received, both for construction and for operations. There are really 5 national companies that are active in pursuing contracts for operating streetcars, and 4 of them chose to bid in Oklahoma City, and that's a compliment to this community. Herzog made an outstanding presentation to you. They offered all of the key personnel that are needed in the program. They have an excellent reputation as a company. They have recently gone through an opening in Kansas City, so they have a very direct and comparable experience that they can apply to Oklahoma City and make your opening go smoothly as you prepare. The contract that you've reviewed and you authorized the RFP really involves work ahead of time. As soon as you can approve that contract, Herzog will be called upon to begin advising Embark on elements associated with preparation for operations. And then that's basically the phase 1. And then phase 2 is the last 6 months before you start operations, where it's the most, actually the most intense part of the whole operation, because you're training personnel, you're hiring personnel, you're testing all the vehicles, you're getting ready, you're going through all of the federal reviews on both safety and readiness for review audits, all to prepare for the opening. And Herzog has to be deeply involved in all of those aspects. I have had the opportunity to work with the gentleman that they offered as the general manager. I think you'll find him very good. And just a minor note to add to your confidence, he has a degree in electrical engineering, which electricity and keeping the electricity operating on a streetcar is at least, it may not be the toughest problem, but it's certainly the most puzzling one. Electricity is always a mystery. It seems like magic sometimes. But that knowledge of electricity is going to be exceedingly important to keep a reliable system operating. Transdev is recommended as the second, and I think that's a wise move on your part to have a second firm to authorize negotiations with. You want to expedite these negotiations and appreciate that after the 18 months before you start operation, the contract is for a 5-year period. So it's a long contract, and there's a lot of responsibility with regard to the responsibility of the private contractor, the responsibility of Embark. That's why the negotiations are so important. And to note that we have not asked for insurance quotes in the bid. We negotiate with the firm, set the terms and conditions for the insurance, and then they seek a quote, and that's a separate cost to the contract, other than the base contract bid that they made. So that's the element that will take some time to assure that you have all of the correct assignment of responsibilities and the appropriate insurance to assure that you can proceed. The next steps then are negotiations with the negotiating team with Embark, and you can expect a contract in March or April of next year.
Are they actively involved in the construction of the project?
Yes, they will be. Herzog is the recommended contractor. Herzog Stacy Whitbeck is the firm, the joint venture that was the low bidder on the construction contract. That's not yet been approved, but that's been announced, and that will go through the City Council late in November. So you'll have the company is the successful bidder on operations and the successful bidder on construction.
Just to clarify, though, Any operations contractor that we selected, would they be involved in consulting with the contractor who does the installation?
Yes, they will be.
So even in the event that we had to fall back to TransDev, they would be involved in discussions regarding the construction of the
That's
facility?
correct.
Okay.
We were also very clear in that during the interview process and stressed that's one of the reasons why we wanted to identify our contractors so early on in the process, at least 18 months ahead of time. So whoever the contractor is and whoever is building it, they can communicate as it's being constructed. We thought
Right,
that was
and
very
I
important.
wanted that to be clear, that wasn't a factor in evaluating either one of those contract recommendations, either the
Right.
the construction or the operation.
Yeah, in fact, obviously when the evaluation committee met to select the contractor, we didn't even know what the bids were for the construction.
That's correct. That's not unusual, and again, the contract with the private operator would start soon after your approval in March or April timeframe, and they would become assistants to Embark. So Embark and MAPS are working cooperatively, Embark doing the operations side, and if you can imagine, the operations side is just going to get more and more intense as you get closer to the opening, and with the design complete and the construction starting, MAPS will complete that, and you'll see Embark becoming more and more prominent in streetcar and MAPS less so as you complete the construction and start preparing for operations. So the communications will be mostly between Embark and MAPS, and Herzog will be supporting Embark's efforts to have a proper operations for the streetcar.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
All in favor? Jason, this might be an appropriate time to introduce your new employee that's going to be involved with that, rather than wait to the end, since we've just discussed that. So,
Sure, no, I think now it's just fine. Yes, I'd like to introduce Jesse Rush. He's joining our team. Jesse joins us from the MAPS office. He was the project manager for the streetcar over there. So he's very familiar with our project. He's actually been part of our team since we started working on the streetcar, but it's good to have him over here to help us see it to fruition and make it to operations. Glad you're here, Jesse.
and the trust just wanted to meet you so we got a scapegoat. We know who to go to now. So you're on the hot seat. So, all right, thank you. Item D is an amendment of contract for architectural services and engineering services for repair and renovation of the Union Station. So our ongoing project.
Yes, our ongoing fixer-upper. So, yeah, approval of amendment number 6 to the contract with Robinson and Associates. And as you know, Robinson and Associates has been assisting us with our projects over at Union Station since going back to at least 2007. They're very familiar with the facility as well as the historical significance of the facility, and taking those things into account as we're making various renovations. So amendment number 6 allows us to continue to use Robinson and Associates to help us evaluate some additional problems with the facility that we've identified. To give you a sense of some of the things they'll be helping us with, one is we do have an issue with our roof drains. Roof drains essentially are like the guttering you might think of on your house, only these drains are the drains from the roof. They're located in the wall. Obviously, they're of considerable age, not in the best shape, and we do get some water intrusion. So that's an issue that we really need to address, along with looking at the north corners, both corners on the north side of the tiled roof. So those are a couple of things that they'll assist us with. We also have some items in there, such as some window replacement, replacing a door to the administrative offices. And then probably the other big item they're going to look at is we're still getting some settling with the building on the east side. So it's that east entrance, the corner of the building there continues to settle, and we really need to do some investigation and determine what we can do to prevent that from continuing to occur. So with this amendment, that'll allow us to be able to work with Robinson Associates to get a little bit more detail on each of these projects, determine cost estimates, prioritize, and then bring them back to the trustees for approval.
I don't know if it's an appropriate time, and I haven't heard anything about it in quite a while, but the discussions we've had a year ago on Union Station, on, whether to trade it, sell it, keep it.
Yeah, I believe there's still interest in the facility becoming a focal point or, a public space for the park. As far as the timing on that, when that might happen, when we may or may not, release control of it, I haven't had any recent discussions about that.
But it is still somewhat an open...
Still an open subject,
Okay.
yes.
All right, do I hear a motion to approve item D?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Last item on our individual consideration is a resolution to participate in the funding of MAPS 3 sidewalk improvements. And, just briefly, Jason.
Yeah. So this is our second opportunity to work with the MAPS office, and as the MAPS office is constructing new sidewalks as part of the MAPS 3 program of projects, we're able to identify those new sidewalks that will be installed that are along the same alignment as a bus route. And when the new sidewalks are being constructed, we're able to have the MAPS contractors also build concrete pads for either a bus shelter or a bus bench. And so by teaming up with the MAPS office and installing these ADA accessible concrete bus bench or bus shelter pads while the sidewalks are being constructed, there's considerable efficiencies and cost savings. And so you can see the item today allocates essentially $6,800 to the cost of those concrete pads, and that will allow for the construction of about 16 different locations where the bus stops themselves will be improved. So we're looking forward to continuing on with our work with the MAPS office.
Do I hear a motion to approve item E?
So moved.
All in favor? Next item is our ratification of claims and payroll. Of course, one large item on there is $2,740,000 for 6 new CNG buses. How many have we received?
Yeah, we've received all 6
All
of them.
6 of them?
Yes, sir.
And they're in service.
They are in service.
All right. Any other items on the ratification? Then I hear a motion to ratify the claims and payroll.
So moved.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. All right, our financial reports, schedule of revenue and expenditures. Are we getting ready to have a presentation? I hear something coming down behind.
Screen's coming down a little early, so
Oh, a little early.
maybe that means
Okay.
I'm supposed to hurry up through this. But looking at our financial reports, if you look at page 2, this is our budget to actual for our transit operations. I'll speak quickly about a couple of the revenue items. The Farebox revenue and the Embark Plus revenue, I wanted to just remind the trustees that when we met last month, we had some variances in these two revenue lines. If you'll recall, Farebox revenue was actually 108% of budget, whereas the Embark Plus revenue was at about 44% of the budget. And I commented at the time, basically it was a timing issue where we had not posted a journal entry to allocate the revenue as it comes in to all the individual lines. So you can see that work has been caught up, and the budget versus actual in terms of revenue amounts are much more in line with what we would expect. Our Farebox revenue is about 93% of what we had expected, or about $28,000 under budget. Our Embark Plus revenue is about 97.5% of what we had expected. Again, very close to budget, just $914 under our projection. Also wanted to mention federal grants. This was another one that when we looked at it last month, it was actually about 300% of the budget because we had received a reimbursement draw earlier than what we had projected. You can see that basically the timing of those payments has caught up to what our projection was, and now we're right at budget, 99.4% of what we had expected. Year-to-date federal grant reimbursement revenue is just over $879,000. And then looking at the area-wide aging agency revenue, this revenue works very similar to our federal grant revenue in that it's always on a reimbursement basis. And so you'll see a variance there of about $27,000, or we're at about 65% of our budget. And again, that's just due to the timing of receiving that reimbursement. We've actually received an additional reimbursement since this budget to actual report was prepared, and that reimbursement was in excess of $20,000. So we're much closer to budget now than at the time this report was prepared. Looking at our operating expenditures, we continue to be in good shape on our operating expenditures. Personal services year-to-date is just under $2.9 million, or 88% of what we had projected. Other services and fees, this is one we looked at last month where we showed to be significantly over budget due primarily to having 2 months of chargebacks hit in August. You can see that's been corrected, and we're now right on budget with our other services and fees. Supplies is similar. We showed to be over budget last month. That's come more in line with what we had expected at about 90% of the budget. We continue to be under on fuel. We're actually at about 60% of what we had projected. You can see year-to-date we spent about $254,000 on fuel. So far we have a savings of about $164,000, and I point that out just to remind the trustees that we have been asked to take a mid-year budget cut of 1.25%. That equates to roughly $200,000 that we'll have to take out of the budget that is before you today, and we plan to be able to capture savings from fuel in order to make that budget reduction.
Question on that, that request, is that cut out of the budget or the city subsidy? They cut that by 1.25?
Yes, and thank you
Okay,
for
so that's how-
allowing me to clarify. It's actually the city, the payment we receive from the general fund, that portion of our budget only is what the cut is based off of. And then on the next page, page 3, looking at our parking revenues, you can see both from the overall revenue and overall expenditure side, we're in good shape. Total operating revenues are right on target with 100.5% of what we would expect. Monthly contract revenue, 99.9% of budget. Transient revenue continues to overperform a bit. Last month we were at 120% of what we had expected. This month we're 116% of what we expected. So overall, that's the one category of revenues that's overperforming, and that is just the daily or transient parking. Looking at our operating expenditures, parking garage operations, other services and fees and supplies are all within or just slightly under budget. Total operating income in excess of expenses and debt service is just under $1.2 million through 3 months of the fiscal year for our parking operations. Looking at Oklahoma River cruises, again, operating revenues and expenditures are in good shape when compared to budget. You can see that overall on operating revenues we're at 108.4%, or about almost 38,000 over what we had projected in terms of revenues. Looking at operating expenditures, we're slightly under. Our ferry contract operations are at 98.7%. or about $2,400 less than what we had projected through 3 months of the fiscal year. So overall, revenues continue to exceed expenditures on the ferry service as well. And then finally on Spokies, again, just looking at total operating revenues versus total operating expenditures, you can see that our revenues are in excess of our expenditures by about $100,000. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions? If not, then I hear a motion to receive our financial reports. All in favor? Opposed? All right, our program reports, our transit system report. Now we get a presentation, or no?
Mr. Chairman, trustees, good morning. Thank you for having us. It's an exciting time. I'd like to touch on 4 topics of the September 2016 transit report: safety, ridership, on-time performance, and how we stack up against our report card year to date. Oh, I'm sorry. The safety thing first, always. We were responsible for one preventable accident during the month of September 2016 with total liabilities of approximately $1,100. We were also responsible for 2 low-dollar accidents with a total liability for both approaching $950. That brings our 3-month preventable accident rolling average to 1.0, which is 1 more than we're planning on, or than we will accept. We experienced 6 non-preventable accidents during the month of September. Thanks, Jeannie. If you take a look at the average daily ridership, you'll see that we achieved 11,922 trips per day in the fixed route compared to 12,534, which is a 4.9% decline month over month. Now, I'd like to, if you take another look at that, I would like to put it into some perspective. The first is that the 12,534 trips per month that we experienced in September 2015 is the highest number of those 15 months represented. It's also the highest number ever. So I love that number, but it's quite a number that we were up against. Secondly, if you take a look at the 11,922, that is the second highest number on those 15 months. So it is a respectable showing, even though our trend continues over the last few months where we are under where we were. I'm not going to really bring up the fact that I brought up last time where year to date we are at 4.2% below where we were fiscal year to date last year, and that is just about half of where our 13 peer cities are, save 1. Thanks, Jeannie. The new night service, it did increase by 1/4%, so it's basically static, and the relationships stay the same between the routes, but that's particularly good news in light of the decreasing revenues in ours and most others month over month ridership. So it continues to grow even though it's slowed down a bit. Such a valuable service. 395 people every night. And pretty soon they'll be riding our buses in the dark. Thanks. Our on-time performance, you'll see that our on-time performance, we achieved 65.41% on-time performance, which when compared to the 66.33% is a 1.4% decline. Now, I almost never would look forward to the next month, but if I were to do that, I'd like to tell you the next time I see you, I have very good news with regards to the impact of the programs that we have instituted, and I'll describe what they are. Some of them are very specific, and while I can't talk about this month, I can tell you that next time I see you, I'll be a lot happier. Thanks. Okay, our measurements against the year-to-date report card, we're at, in number of passengers per service hour, we're at 93%. In the number of passengers per operating day, we're at 97%. We're at 90% on the number or percentage of on-time arrivals. Not that I would mention it, but I suspect that's going to go up deeply. Number of miles between road calls, we're at 111%. Thank you for those new buses. Number of accidents per 100,000 miles, we're at 133%, which is above where we want to be, but we're going to improve. and the number of passenger claims is 64% of goal, which is a good thing.
What goes into that? Passenger claims?
That's Michael Scroggins' office collects data on every single passenger claim that we have and then compares it to the 100,000 miles. And I'm glad to report that some of those claims are, not all of them result in a legitimate claim.
Are these injuries or just complaints?
Oh, it's just displeasure with the service.
Oh, okay.
Thanks for asking, yeah. Is that about right, Michael?
Those are, I believe those are actually our passenger claims, like it could, yeah. It could be, yeah, an injury or anything, yeah.
It's not a person who calls
Right.
in and says, the bus drove past me without picking me up. It's not that, right?
No, it's if somebody were to
Right.
fall on the bus
Right.
or
Okay.
slip out of their
All right.
seat, those kinds of things.
It's an actual dollar claim made against the trust.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. I'll get that right. Are there any other questions on that portion until next month when I'm a little happier on the on-time performance that I'm not mentioning?
Well, wear your happy hat next time, and we'll know.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much. The modern streetcar update, there's just a couple little things I'd like to mention. The first is that we continue to work on these safety programs. I'll tell you, Mr. Gustafson is, they're this thick. It's part of the reason why his hair is gray. Let's see, the other thing I'd like to mention is that it's important to note that both with the Citizens Subcommittee selection of the route, it was a unanimous decision on their part, and it included everything that we wanted. The selection of the selection committee for the maintenance and operations was also unanimous, and we're just so happy about the overwhelming, not only response from the responsible players, but of the things that are included and our opportunity to make a clear choice that was so clear it was unanimous. So just so pleased the streetcar is getting off on the right foot.
Well, thank you for the update that you give us in our
Thank you
booklet.
very
It's
much.
not-
My pleasure.
All right, our parking system report.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Like to note that while total operating revenues are up, some of that's contributed to the rate adjustments that were implemented on September 1st. As of today, we still have not seen our customer base, after multiple attempts, to rebalance into our other garages. We have seen an increase in new customers reaching out that are looking to move into the downtown area. None of that has come to fruition, but they've reached out and asked us about monthly parking. Overall, monthly parking, we have a 5.2% vacancy. Our occupancy rate is at 94%, 94.8%. Operating revenues turned out to be $685,000, $100,000 variance over September 2015. Our monthly parking, we have a difference, an increase of $43,000 versus last year. Some of that has to do with the rate adjustments and timely payments from our customer base. Our transient parking sector, we have a small increase of 50 transient tickets over the year over in comparison to September 2015. A revenue increase of over $16,000 that's attributed to the rate adjustment. Event parking, I'd like to talk about a little more in detail, and that is we're starting to include estimated attendees for events in the report. That information is passed to us from the event organizers to the establishment, the events taking place, and then on to us. It is plain and simple an estimate. While we're on that note, in the parking industry, when you're looking at, say, a luncheon type event or a convention type of event, typically you're looking at about one person per vehicle versus a concert would have 2.5 persons per vehicle. So that attendance factor is difficult to measure. In 2015, there was one concert versus 3 concerts in 2016. Our event revenue is a substantial increase over 2015, $40,000. That has to do with, 1, the rate adjustment, and 2, concerts and the number of vehicles entering the facilities. On tenant leases, we had some credits that were issued. The credits had to do with some electrical charges that were miscalculated and some overpayments, and then the larger portion is for our tenant at Santa Fe Station due to the fact that construction has removed the parking from his facility, and we're obligated.
How are the renovations coming?
So renovations are coming along. We're looking at the parking spaces to be reestablished mid-November, and so those rent credits will fall off.
But I mean, for the UCO, I mean, for the retail space.
For UCO, we're talking with UCO and the Public Works Department.
We haven't started those renovations yet.
Correct. We have not started those. Would like to take the opportunity to update everybody on the software adjustments that were implemented in October. Our focus going into this was 1, customer service, and 2, revenue control during the software adjustment. On October 13th and 14th, we attempted to move the physical server into what's called a virtual server. That did not go as planned. The software that was provided from SCADATA pertaining to the Microsoft portion or the operating system was not configured properly. And so we did not implement the virtual component of the system. Happy to report that over those 2 days, we had 0 customer complaints due to staffing and the hard work of the contractors and staff. On the 18th, we implemented the software upgrades to the physical server. That went as planned, and we are looking at possibly upgrading to the virtual component next week, as we believe we've found the solution with the assistance of the Austrians. While there was some speed bumps, just very pleased to comment on our contractors and vendors and how they stepped up and really helped us through this process. There was many 12-hour days followed by a couple 17 and 18-hour days. Any questions?
All right. I'm sure you're glad to get that behind you if you can.
I'll be glad to report when the virtual is. We did it yesterday. We plugged one device, one pay-on-foot device into the virtual, and it worked. An Austrian is supposed to be remoting into the system and verifying that everything worked, but with that, once that's been verified by the experts, we'll proceed.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, our long-range plan, and
Just have a short report today, a little bit on ACOG and what's happened there, a little bit of information about transit-oriented development, and then the benefit cost analysis. For ACOG, October was a really busy month, and so it was kind of big for us too. Just like we go through a triennial review every 3 years, they undergo an inspection by the federal government every 4 called the quadrennial review. And some of it is sort of a review of what Cotpa does in planning. And it all went well. We provided them good information. We were present for most of the sessions, and that went well. But also, the ACOG is the regional body responsible for something called the Year 2040 Encompass Long-Range Transportation Plan. A lot of the aspects of that are about roads and highways and bridges and trails, but there's also a lot of attention paid to transit in that plan as well, and that plan was adopted by the ACOG board just last week. And it's a plan that talks a lot about transit. It doesn't get real specific about projects because it's a plan that has to be based on the amount of funding that is reasonably going to be expected. And, because there's not really a dedicated funding source for transit in the region, a lot of the great transit projects are sort of out there as scenarios or as illustrative projects. But, their planning process really has helped show that there's a lot of support out there for public transportation and for growing that. The transit-oriented development, we were asked to present on a webinar about TOD, about what happened with our technical assistance, as well as some of the thinking initial thinking going towards TOD, and that went well. And we did receive a draft report from Smart Growth America with some recommendations from last summer. We just got those this week. Hopefully we can provide those in the next month. And then finally, on the Northwest Multimodal Planning, you as a board approved an RFP for a benefit cost analysis. We received there were 3 bidders that were very interested, and some negotiations underway right now. We hope to bring a contract back to you in December to bring one of those on to help us with that really important piece of looking at benefits versus costs for that Northwest potential BRT project. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Well, I was just going to mention that the meeting we had when ACOG made a brief presentation on Encompass 280,
2040, yeah.
240,
2040,
okay.
sure.
That they did address the regional transit. And we all asked some questions directed at that because we were more interested in that probably than where they were going to build sidewalks or whatever the projects were. And so it is encouraging that dialogue continues, that we may get there someday.
They're a good partner. Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, marketing.
Good morning.
Now, what's a real complaint now?
Yeah, that's a little scary. So we have participated in a couple of different events this last month. One of the major ones was Open Streets. It's always been a fun one for us. It's always a good opportunity to be able to invite people on board a bus. Again, we were able to showcase the bus as a hotspot, and now with the new buses, you have the USB charging capabilities on board the bus. So it just, again, shows how the buses can be used as different community tools, but also introduce transit in a new way. We also hosted our annual health fair last month, and while we were there, we had, I would say, about 400 to 500 people pass through the event. Because of a shortage with the flu vaccines, we only had a limited number that we could hand out, and those were all delivered this year. We also had a partner that we've had there, but they've also started providing toiletry kits and different types of basic necessity needs, and over 250 of those kits were passed out this year, as well as a little over 100 blood pressure checks were made as well. And then we haven't received a number back yet from Delta Dental, but they had their mobile smiles unit. It was not the truck, but the one that they set up inside buildings present, and we had many go through, and they said it was probably the most they've had go through at our event. And so they were all very pleased with that as well. And then we also had a continuation with our tobacco-free cessation program, and we had, I believe, close to 90 different individuals sign up to receive assistance from the 1-800-QUIT line, which means that they call you and they contact you on a regular basis to help you with a QUIT program. And so we were very encouraged by that as well. It's something that we want to continue to be supportive of our customers and our employees as they continue down that path. One of the other things I'd like to mention is just out to the south here, as you exit the building, we have our first rideshare vehicle that's been branded. It's available for you to look at. It's a black Traverse, and it will just give you an idea of what one of those vehicles looks like and what you might be seeing on the road very soon with a different group or a van pool. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Any questions, Michael? All right. Thank you. River cruises. You all just trade places, Jeannie.
Yeah. I'm multitasking. Yeah. Well, good morning. There we go. Ridership in the third quarter was up significantly from prior years. Year-to-date ridership is up 28% over 2015 and 42% over 2014. Staff attributes this increase to an aggressive Facebook campaign, which increases awareness of our service. Riders per service hour is a measure of the efficiency of the service. The target for this measure is 11 riders per service hour. We're currently averaging 12.74, or almost 13. This, of course, is a contributing factor is the fair weather and the awareness of the campaign, of the ferry service. In addition, the HMS staff stays in touch with the hoteliers in the Meridian corridor and the Bricktown area to keep them aware, and we do get a lot of recommendations from those folks. October was our Haunt the River month for specialty cruises. We sold out before September was over. It was just a fantastic event with a very long waiting list of folks. If someone suddenly couldn't go, as soon as they canceled, another group would sign on. So it was a very, very successful event. We did that 6 weekends in October. Charters are up 20% over last year, and we expect the sales through the end of 2016 to continue to surpass 2015, and we might even make that 2014 number. A little bit about Facebook. Followers on Facebook have risen 51% since a year ago. Advertising costs on Facebook are as little as under $100 per ad and can reach as many as 12,000 people. This, of course, is a major contributor to our ridership. I should note that our 73% of our followers are women. 73% of our followers are between 25 and 54, which is our target audience, so we're very happy about that. As we all know, women make all the decisions about where to have a party, so we need them. Destinations. Destinations are a driving force developing a viable transit operation, whether it be buses, ferries, bike share. If you don't have somewhere for someone to go, it's not really transit. So having these additional facilities being developed along the river is certainly a good thing for us. With the addition of the Wheeler District Ferris wheel and the recent dedication of the equestrian park at River Park near Stockyards Landing, we see opportunities for possible development of new landings along the river. In the meantime, there are great attractions that help us to develop our ridership. Quit working, Michael.
Does the ferry stop at the Ferris wheel?
No, it does not at this time. They're still working on development of that property, and so it may be a while before we can get into there. Our next stop would most likely be at the equestrian park. Would probably be about our lowest cost landing to implement, and the one with the destination to arrive at the earliest time. Wheeler Park will be down the road, and of course, American Union Cultural Center will be further down the road as well. As for Spokies, or as we call it in October, Spookies, we did decorate for Halloween this year, and that was well received. Michael took some of the shots and incorporated them into a Facebook campaign, which was very successful. Here we go. September ridership was just barely above what we had in the prior year. Of course, that August dip was when we didn't have a system in place for the first 2.5 weeks of the month. But October is up, and we think that is largely due to the unusually warm weather, good weather that we've had in October. As for Facebook, for Spokies, our Facebook followers have risen 78% since last year, and our followers there are comprised of 67% women. 71% of our riders are between the ages of 25 and 54. These results are not surprising. What we'd like to do is attract the non-common rider. The common rider, of course, is the young male. Attracting the non-common rider would be business people downtown, women who live and work downtown, and other people who can make use of the Spokey system to get around the downtown area. We also will continue to pursue our monthly and annual pass holders. And that is all I have for you today, if you have any questions.
All right, any questions? All right, thank you. Do I hear a motion to receive our program reports?
So moved.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Any items from the trustees?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Usually it's my policy to not surprise Jason at a meeting with a request or a suggestion, but I'm thinking that given that we will soon start having a streetcar report, that maybe we should consider, if the trustees were accepting of the idea, to continue to receive all the written reports that we do, but to go to an every other month in-person presentation by the staff so that we could continue to hear from the staff. No disrespect, y'all do a great job, but in terms of timeliness of our meeting to encourage us to receive enough information but not have it take such a long meeting. The other thing that would be possible then is Jason could give us highlights from the reports or we could ask the staff questions if we had read the report and there was an issue in the report that was a question to us. And certainly we don't need to vote on that today.
I try to run a timely meeting.
You absolutely do. You absolutely do, Mr. Chairman. I'm just thinking that as we get closer to having a longer streetcar report, that it may become a little bit unwieldy.
Well, or if there's any really significant issues that need to be addressed.
Right.
We could, one thought is we could develop kind of a, like I say, a proposed schedule of reports. I know, one of the things Marilyn and I have talked about is trying to do more reporting on special services, some things that the trustees don't always get an opportunity to hear about. So, certainly we can accommodate whatever the trustees want to do.
That's my only item for today. Thank you.
I'll send that to committee.
Okay.
Any other comments by any of the trustees?
Just if you have a few moments, we'd love to show you the Traverse that Michael mentioned, this, so you can get a look at our Vanpool vehicles.
Jason, did you want to mention the presentation from the Office of the Mayor on Tuesday?
Oh, sure, yes. So during the council meeting on Tuesday, Cotpa will be recognized by the mayor for our Outstanding Public Transportation System Award that APTA gave us this year in recognition of some of the recent progress we've made as a transit system. So certainly want to invite all the trustees to that meeting.
What time's council meeting start?
8:30.
8:30.
Starts at 8:30, but I believe that the mayor's office usually takes pictures beginning at about 8 a.m. So if you're going to come, you might want to join in the picture that day.
I also wanted to mention, I wanted to introduce Dennis Fry, too, a new employee with us. He's actually been with us a couple months now. This is his first trust meeting. Dennis Fry is our new fleet manager, so he's over all of course, our fleet and our facilities. Comes to us with many years of experience, and in fact, most recently, several years of experience with a CNG fleet of heavy equipment. So welcome to Dennis.
So you don't know anything about CNG? Thank you.
He was educating me yesterday.
Oh,
a few
okay.
things, so yeah.
All right, anything else? Then I would say we're adjourned, and everybody have a nice Thanksgiving before our next meeting, and we'll see you then.